There we go. Okay, turn it down. If it was only like this every Sunday, right? Now that you've seen lightning doesn't strike, you're okay to come back. We're Anglican, we get along with everybody. Welcome, glad you're here. From many people that I recognize from multiple events in the past, it's really great to have you here. And it's a great venue for it, and we love our relationship with the city, and that we can be used for such events like this. I do want to welcome the mayor, and I also want to welcome Leanne, who I'm not allowed to say the mayor emeritus, but you get it. It's great to see you. And there's so many members of city council and neighborhood community boards, and I'm going to let them, as they get involved, address that stuff. And I'll be in the back working on chairs, I think, because we're running a little short. I do want to do the required, look at the steel. You're in a great building, probably one of the best in the city if there was a quake. It's withstood a few. You'll be safe. Once it's all done, if something were to happen, we'll move everybody out. Now, what you can't do is what they do in a movie theater, which is everybody runs for the door they came in. That's going to be a bit cramped. If you look around kind of like a flight attendant, you've got doors to the left and right, and to your left and right rear, as well as the one you came in. So there's plenty of doors to go in and out of. Facilities are in the foyer, as you would expect. If you need anything, I'll be back there, and we'll be glad to help you. Nicola's going to be hosting this today, and she's also going to give us a moment to honor what's happened in Morocco, and if you haven't heard, what's happened in Libya today, which is quite horrible. And so, even though I'm the priest, I'll let my friend do that. Look, since I've been here for 4 years, we've hosted a number of these type of events. And they've always been, well, it's Avonhead, it's Ilam, it's Russley. It's always been such a lovely gathering of people, including those very controversial referenda that we did. If you remember those, it was such a great night and so respectful and kind, because people want to hear to understand, not hear to respond. And then we did the one last time where we did a town hall with the mayor and with Sam. And frankly, I was so angry when I went home. My wife had to endure my rant because there were people who came from other suburbs who were like professional protesters, if we could have that in Christchurch. And it just was not on. This is, ready for this? This is my father's house. And I'm in charge in my house. And we're not going to do that. We're just not going to do it. It's not appropriate and it's not kind. There were people who said very cruel, hurtful things against the people. They used language that's not on in here. I'm an Anglican. I've probably heard it a time or two, but not in here. And they just were not respectful in the heckling and those things. Let's let candidates speak. That's the whole thing with democracy, and make wise choices. Now, if it happens, I remind you, Jesus cleared the temple twice with a whip. And then one time, he had a quite good rant at some Pharisees, and then he got accused of unchristlike behavior. Give that a thought. So if that does occur, here's my plan. No surprises. If I come to the end of your row and give you the look that your mom used to give you when it was like, be quiet, or. But then if the guy in the police uniform comes to the end of the row, it's like, I'm going to help you exit without drawing a lot of attention. So there it is, right? There's the one strike, and then that's it. And so that's how we're going to go. But seriously, we're really glad that you're here. We hope it's a great night. For those who are standing, priests are trained to do such thing as move chairs. So I'll get that solved. And that's Nicola's buzzer for me. Yeah. No, that's fine. Nicola, it's over to you now. And thanks, everybody, for being here.
Apologies about the phone. Thank you, Reverend Brantley. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, and thank you all for being here. My name is Nicola McCormick, and I'm a community board member for Waimairi, but today I am here as a member of the Avonhead community group. I'll be the presenter and the MC for today's meeting. We welcome a number of people tonight that Reverend Brantley has said. It's lovely to see our Mayor here, Phil Major. We've got Councillor Sam McDonald, community board members, possibly some other councillors here. We have got the previous Mayor, Leanne Dalziel, Gary Moore. Welcome to you all. Just before we start, I would just like, if it is okay, to have a show of hands as to how you found out about this meeting. If it was because of the leaflet drop, could you please raise your hands? Wow. Social media? Thank you. Right. Great. Okay. Right. Okay, before we begin the meeting, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the recent earthquake in Morocco and the terrible floods in Libya, and express our deepest sympathies to those who have been affected by these tragedies. As residents of Christchurch, we know all too well the devastating impact that earthquakes and other natural disasters can have on a community. Today I ask that we take a moment of silence to remember those who have lost their lives or have been injured in these tragedies. Right. The main purpose of this public meeting is to meet our ILM candidates. It is an opportunity to learn more about their policies, their vision for our community, and how they plan to address the issues that matter most to us. I will also give you a brief, and I promise it's pretty brief, recap from the last public meeting that was held on the 26th of April last year. Many of you will remember that the Avonhead Community Group held a public meeting on the 26th of April 2022 to discuss Three Waters, housing intensification, and the removal of minimum parking requirements from new developments. That meeting took place in the same hall. The hall was absolutely full that night. I think we counted over 450 people. Among those to address the audience were Councillor Sam McDonald and our immediate past Mayor Leanne Dalziel. The overwhelming consensus from that meeting was no to Three Waters. Three Waters should be repealed. Christchurch should be exempt from housing intensification. Intensification should only happen in the confines of the 4 avenues. Minimum parking requirements should be restored for new developments. So the Avonhead Community Group took action by writing 2 separate letters to the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, one on Three Waters and one on housing intensification and parking requirements. Our letters were acknowledged, but we did not receive any meaningful response to either letter. We also wrote the same letters to the Leader of the Opposition, Christopher Luxon. Here, our letters were not even acknowledged. The response to Three Waters from the responsible minister simply restated the reasons why Three Waters was being reformed, instead of engaging with the issues that we had identified. The only response we got in relation to housing intensification and parking requirements was to say that our letter was being sent for consideration to the responsible minister, the Honourable Megan Woods. However, we never heard back from Megan Woods. As you know, since then, the government has enacted legislation to establish parts of the Three Waters reform. We do not know whether the government, if re-elected, will continue with these reforms. We also do not know if a different government would repeal Three Waters. That will be one of the issues for the candidates today to address. The Christchurch City Council opposed housing intensification and negotiated with the government on how the requirements should apply to Christchurch. Currently, the council has proposed a diluted version of housing intensification, which will go through a hearing process from October. We want to know whether the government, if re-elected, would accept the diluted version or force the same requirements on Christchurch as Auckland and Wellington. We also want to know where National Green and the Opportunities Party, Democracy New Zealand stand on this issue and on minimum parking requirements. Apart from these, there are also a number of other issues that the residents of the Ilam constituency are facing at present. One is the chlorination of our waters. This was meant to be a temporary solution, but now looks like a permanent measure imposed by Wellington. Another issue is high crime rates. The number of burglaries, ram raids and break-ins that are happening every day is frightening. Healthcare is another issue. The hospital system is not working well. The waiting times in emergencies are several hours. There is an acute staff shortage, meaning that patients have minimal care during the weekends. Parking is inadequate. Waiting lists are long, and if you are waiting for surgery, there is no guarantee that you will be operated on the allocated date. Residents of the Ilam constituency want to know what the candidates who are here today mean to do about these issues. We want to know what their position is on Three Waters, housing intensification and minimum parking requirements in Christchurch, chlorination, crime and healthcare. Right, in terms of the structure of the meeting, getting into the interesting part, in a short while I will invite the candidates to come forward and introduce themselves and address the audience. They will have strictly 3 minutes each. 3 minutes. There will be a bell rung at 3 minutes, so I ask the candidates to please finish promptly. And once all the candidates have spoken, there will be a time for questions from the audience. And as well as that, we will also get our candidates to do a brief recap at the end of the night. So please do stay until the end of the meeting. I know it's been said before, but I would like to remind you to be respectful while each candidate is addressing the audience. Be courteous, avoid interrupting, and use appropriate language. And I ask for genuine questions that seek to understand the candidates' views and positions, not to challenge or attack them personally. No heckling inside this space. We do need to remember that this is a place of worship, so I do ask your respect, please. Right. I would like to invite the candidates to come and sit up here, please. Your seats have been named. Right, thank you. Great, perfect. And there is water there for you if you need it. Right, the order of the speakers has been decided by a lottery that we conducted this afternoon. So first up, remember you've got 3 minutes. First up, we will have Hamish Campbell standing for National, please. And I have a microphone here for you, so you can stand where you're comfortable. Would you like to stand? Everyone, would you like to stand?
It's a harsh crowd. I was hoping to sit down.
Sorry.
Well, good evening. I'm Hamish Campbell. I'm the National Party candidate for the Ilam electorate. It's great to be here in Avonhead. This is the area that I was born and raised. I live in the Ilam electorate. I live with my wonderful wife Carol, and we have two young daughters that go to school and childcare here in Ilam. We chose about 3 years ago to return to Ilam after I'd had an international career in medical research. I have a PhD in cancer and viruses and have worked in the field of cancer, viruses and autoimmune disease, in particular multiple sclerosis. I've worked both as an academic in a laboratory setting and also at the area of advocating for people with disease and also developing research policy and strategy. And so that has caused me to be very passionate about research and development and the effects that can have on people's lives and also increasing the standard of living. Since we've returned to Christchurch, I've worked remotely, of course, with the background of viruses during a pandemic has meant that there's been quite a bit of demand overseas for scientific skills. Carol and I have two businesses. We have an online floristry business and we also have a share in an organic apple orchard, which happens also to be in the Ilam electorate, and that's the first certified export organic apple orchard in Canterbury. I strongly believe that New Zealand can be the best small advanced economy in the world, delivering higher incomes, lowering the cost of living, have safer streets, better infrastructure, and we have an economy which is going to keep our children and grandchildren here and attract those that have gone overseas to come back. Since being selected for the National Party, I've knocked on the doors of over 14,500 voters here in Ilam. So some of you looking around, I've seen some familiar faces. I've knocked on your doors. And that's been really important to hear the issues that are affecting the people of Ilam. Also, living in the area has meant that I've experienced some of these issues. You just need to have a young family these days and go to the supermarket to know what the cost of living crisis actually is. And of course, food prices have gone up another 8.9% over the last year. I've also had a family member, a 14-year-old, attacked in Riccarton Mall. These are some of the issues that we are facing in Ilam. And as I've moved around, it doesn't matter whether you go to the Cuts Road dairy that's been ram-raided or the Norman Roads Mini Mart, who's been in business for 33 years and in the last 6 months have been attacked twice. These are the issues, and I think the people of Ilam, the issues really are cost of living, the sense of lawlessness, our failing healthcare system, and our falling educational standards. And I think the people of Ilam want an MP who's consistently present in the electorate, that's hardworking, and that's what I intend to be. So why am I standing for the National Party? It's because I believe everybody deserves a fair shot at life.
Thank you, Hamish. Next, I would like to welcome Sarah Pallett, standing for Labour, and our current MP.
Kia ora tātou. It's absolutely lovely to be with you this evening and to see so many of you. Gosh, this is an amazing crowd. And I want to acknowledge and thank the community group for putting this event together and hosting what I'm sure will be a really productive and respectful meeting. But I just want to talk a little bit about my vision for Ilam and what we've been up to really in the electorate over the past 3 years. At the last candidates debate, that was the Taxpayers Union debate that was held at Missio just a few days ago, I spoke a little about my vision for Ilam. I spoke about how diverse the electorate is. I spoke about how misunderstood it is to some degree, how some people feel that it's just an electorate full of very wealthy people, and it couldn't be further from the truth. We do have people who are wealthy living in the electorate, but we also have the second largest social housing area. We have one of the most diverse communities here in Ilam. We have some of, if not the most, variation in ethnic diversity in ethnic communities here. I used to say from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe, we've got everybody here. We have old, we have young, we have everybody. But irrespective of where people live, how much they earn, or their background, their ethnicity, their gender, my vision for Ireland is that everybody should be treated fairly and equitably and have a fair go. Everyone needs a warm, safe, dry place to live, a decent school for their kids, a secure, well-paid job that fulfills them, and quality healthcare when they need it. To be treated well by their employer, for their employer to have a fair crack too. For me, that's what fairness is, and that's what I want for everyone in Ireland. That's what I've worked hard to try to achieve over the past 3 years, and what Labour in government has worked to achieve. But we know times have been really tough. As a country, we've endured together a global pandemic, a terror attack, a global economic crisis, cyclones and floods. And I don't know if you know, but the cyclones are the second largest natural disaster that New Zealand has experienced. Through all of this, Labour in government has put people first. The former Prime Minister and the then Minister for COVID response and our now Prime Minister made really tough decisions in unprecedented times. Tough decisions that were sometimes unpopular. Tough decisions, though, that saved thousands of lives. Now, Labour also supported businesses with wage subsidies and other financial support that did save thousands of businesses. But look, we never stopped investing in our future. In 2017, we started contributions back again into the superannuation fund that the national government, the previous national government, had stopped during the global financial crisis. Do you know, there's so much to talk about, but for now, I'll close by saying that through unprecedented times, Labour and I have always been here working for you and have your back.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, I would like to invite Juanita O'Connell, standing for Democracy New Zealand.
Thank you. Whoops. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm very, very new to this political scene, and so we'll run by my notes, if that's all right with everybody. I was born in Waitaki and moved to Christchurch. My father worked on the Benmore Dam in the 60s. I went overseas very early on in my late teens and lived overseas until 2004. I'm a financial advisor and working in the insurance, mortgages and KiwiSaver space. I've been doing that for 13 years. During the earthquakes, I jumped the fence and I worked with AIG and worked in the adjusting team, working on 350 commercial claims. Loved that work. Also, AIG was one of the reinsurers for the council, and I was also involved in that claim. Prior to that, I was living in London, and I set up a US visa consultancy. Also, I've dipped my toe in the political water. Managed a London office of 15 staff for a Middle Eastern, Oman-based special advisor to the head of state as a political strategist. This involved many diplomatic trips internationally, and I spent a lot of time in Washington, DC. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of my background, as you don't know me as well as the other candidates. The reason for getting involved, what prompted me to be in a political party was when I realised that the politicians were just simply not listening to New Zealanders. It absolutely frightened the wits out of me. I felt really politically homeless until I came across Democracy NZ. It's a party that has the values, integrity and honesty to be truly representative of the needs of all New Zealanders and put them first, to rebuild and restore democracy as it ought to be and remove the laws that divide the people or do not serve the interests of the majority. My motivation in politics is to make a difference, to be an advocate, a voice for those issues that are important to Ireland constituents and New Zealanders. I really did not imagine being a candidate, and you can probably tell I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not used to public speaking, but I just felt I had to stand up, especially for all the Kiwis who have not been heard, who lack the ability or opportunity to speak up and to offer Democracy NZ as an alternative light and to hold other parties and government to account. So if you want hard-working representation that can deliver results in the electorate and the parliament, vote for me. To create change, we must be part of the change we want to create.
Next, I'd like to ask Mike Davis from the Green Party, please, to speak.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou, ko Mike Davidson, taku ingoa. It's actually a really good pleasure to be here speaking to you. I think this is the biggest crowd that I've ever spoke to at an election debate, and I've done quite a few debates, so it's actually really impressive. I'm not here to ask you to vote for me. What I want you to do, though, is vote for the Green Party. Look, there's actually a really good chance in Ireland that if the Greens get 15%, you end up getting 2 MPs. You get one of these fine people up here, plus you'd get me. And what's even better, at 15%, Christchurch gets 3 Green MPs. That's having 3 strong voices in Wellington for Christchurch. For the last 9 years, I have been representing an area in Ireland firstly as a community board member, which I've actually done for 9 years, and then as a city councillor. So I'm very aware of some of the local issues and more aware of most of Ireland when I've been doing door knocking over the last number of weeks. And so what I want to touch on now is something that's not going to be raised during the meeting, which is a bit of a shame, and that's climate change. Climate change, it's no longer an abstract thought for the future. It's something that's happening now, and it's happening here. And as a low-lying coastal city, Christchurch is going to be significantly impacted by climate change and sea level rise. We need to be working with communities on adaptation plans, but you cannot just adapt your way out of climate change, and we have to mitigate. And that means central government working with local government, working with communities. And it's been the Green Party for the last 30 years pushing for climate action. And we know the only way we're going to see bold climate action is with a party vote Green. There needs to be more Green MPs in Parliament if we want to ensure that our children, our grandchildren, don't inherit an uncertain future. It is really, really important. The discussions we're going to have tonight are important, but they're focused on now. We also need to focus on the future. It's the actions that we've done and the actions of those before us that have put us into this situation. The time is now to actually vote for a party that looks towards the future and making a change for the better. We have not seen it from successive governments. They are failing people and they are failing the climate. Party vote Green.
Thank you, Mike. And I would now like to ask Raf Manji from the Opportunities Party to speak, please. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Look, it's fantastic to be back here. It was 10 years ago that I first stood for representative politics, just round the corner at the Merrin School. Probably a lot of you were there at that meeting. And I was dipping my toe into local politics, something I didn't know a great deal about. And the reason for that was the earthquakes. The earthquakes, we were all impacted, that terrible loss of life, the terrible damage to our city, brought us out as a community, which was fantastic. I got involved with the Student Volunteer Army. I was actually a student at the time, yes, a postgrad student, at the university when the earthquake hit. And I became chair of the Student Volunteer Army Foundation and got to meet lots of people in the city as we got about the rebuild, got about the reimagining of Christchurch. Met this lovely lady down here, Leanne Dalzell, who suggested it would be a good idea if I stood for council. I thought, really? I don't know about that. She goes, oh, yeah, it'll be fine. You'll really enjoy it. Well, I don't know about that. It's when we got in, it was pretty stark stuff. We faced a financial crisis. Looking at what Auckland's gone through, I think we had 4 times the budget hole that they had, an insurance claim, just all the challenges that we all remember. And we then went through the floods, and we invested in stormwater protection, and we continue to invest in that, and that has paid dividends. We had the fires, the Port Hill fires, and then, of course, we had the terrible attack on the 15th of March. And it was really tested this city. And in that whole period, I guess my commitment to the city has been to serve and to support our communities and to advocate for our communities. And yes, occasionally I've spoken frankly, but when it comes to Christchurch, that's my passion. And I think that is the job of your elected representative, is to stand up for your city. And I think what we've been missing the last 6 years is a lack of voice for Christchurch. I've heard nothing from our local MPs on the 3 waters. Nothing on the MDRS, nothing on the water chlorination. Who is speaking for us in Wellington? At the moment, it's silence. So I want to stand here, be your representative again. I've shown the commitment, I have the experience, I have the credibility. I want to be your champion in Wellington. So that's why I'm here tonight. Great to see you all, and look forward to answering your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open the floor for questions from the audience. The way this will work will be, if you have a question, raise your hand. There will be a few people who will go to you who will have a microphone. Please do not hold the microphone. It will be held for you. You can then ask your question, but please keep it respectful. Also, please state who the question is for. If it is for all of them, you can say this is for everyone. If it is for one particular person, please say their name. We have set aside approximately 40 minutes for these questions, give or take. We might finish earlier, we might be a little bit longer, but we want to finish on time. Right, so questions. Oh, we've got.
I have a question for all the candidates, and it's about proper resourcing for the health system. You can import as many doctors as you like and train as many, but the reality is that we can earn 2 to 3 times as much in Australia, and if you don't make it at least comparable, we will keep going. And that also goes for general practice, not just to Whatuora, and some of us are going to be striking again to say that, because it is pitiful in there, and many of our colleagues are on their knees with what they have to see every day. And you've got to increase the wages of the clinical staff, and it is actually really urgent. What are you going to do about it?
Shall I go first?
Yes, please.
Yeah, look, you're right. It's an absolute crisis, and I think a couple of things. The previous health minister, Andrew Little, denied for years that there was a crisis when clearly there was a crisis, and the government attempted a centralisation program at the worst possible time. So we lost a lot of senior clinicians overseas, and a lot of people just gave up. If you think about how our hospital was operating when David Mates was CEO, it was doing really good work. It was still being underfunded by Wellington, but it was at least in reasonable shape. And unfortunately, there's no good news. I mean, essentially, the government has to reach into the coffers, which seem to be bare, to stop our key staff leaving. And it's not just nurses and doctors and care workers and teachers and police, it's the whole public service, because the government has not invested enough in those basic services because they've spent too much time on structural changes which didn't need to happen. So we actually need to turn that around and say, okay, let's stop those structural changes and let's actually just reinvest in funding our basic core services. Otherwise, we're not going to have those people around. And you're right, we're not going to be able to rely on just importing labour from overseas.
Yeah, thanks for your question. It was an excellent question, and you're right. And this is a problem of underinvestment for a long time, and this is from successive governments that have been failing the health system people. And the Greens have always stood up for nurses and for teachers and firefighters who are underpaid for the work that they actually do and the service they give to community. And actually there is enough wealth in New Zealand to ensure that the health system is funded correctly and also nurses and doctors are paid correctly.
Yes, definitely under-resourced, and also I think that a lot of the mandated out medical staff, they still cannot work in the system. There's still problems around that, and that could be one of the areas that they could actually look at, and that needs to be ceased immediately, in our view. Also looking at the end where you're actually looking at root causes of diseases. So putting a lot of focus on health, prevention of diseases, that sort of thing. That's going to be one of the focuses that Democracy NZ is going to look at, amongst other things.
Yeah, I totally agree. Our staff have been underfunded, and I think we've seen the consequences. In Christchurch, there's 1,000 people waiting over 12 months to get surgery. We've seen ED wait times. With 2018, the wait, 95% of patients were seen within 6 hours. That's now fallen to below 70%. And that's not the fault of the staff by any stretch of the imagination. We have rearranged the deck chairs on the Titanic without actually doing anything useful. And so we have said that we're going to increase funding each year for healthcare. And the thing is, we also need to make sure that we fund primary healthcare effectively. We're, about 1,700 GPs short, and that's probably a light on estimate. Until we get primary healthcare, we're going to our hospitals are going to be bearing the brunt of a lot of these things, and we're going to have health disparities in our communities.
Thank you. Goodness, there's some short memories around. Look, before I entered politics, I was a midwife, and I was a midwifery lecturer. So I've worked in primary health, I've worked in the community as a community-based midwife, and I've also worked in the hospital as a hospital-based midwife, as well as teaching baby midwives too. And I can tell you that under the previous national government, nurses received a 10% pay increase over 9 years, and there was woeful investment in our health infrastructure, woeful, under that previous government. We inherited buildings with sewerage coming down the walls. We inherited an under-resourced, understaffed, underappreciated workforce. And I have to tell you that having been in the primary health workforce myself, look, they're extraordinary human beings who will all go above and beyond, and then beyond that, and then beyond that, because they fundamentally care so deeply about the people that they're serving. Now, they shouldn't have to go to the lengths that they have to go to, but they do. And then there comes a point where they can't do it anymore. And we've been piling money into the health workforce and piling money into health infrastructure. You'll have heard a 59.9% increase for senior nurses' pay was relatively recently announced after the very prolonged pay settlement, which was bringing, recognizing that the vast majority of nurses were and are women, and that they have been chronically underfunded for many years. Locally, or not in Ireland, but in Christchurch, $129 million investment in a new building at Hillmorton Hospital. If any of you have had the experience of working or visiting anybody in Hillmorton or being a patient yourself, you'll be aware that that service was horribly underfunded, and that building was completely unfit for purpose. Waipapa, again, huge amount of money going in there. And we've built money into building new hospitals too. We've committed to Whangarei Hospital, put enormous sums of money into Dunedin, but there is still a huge amount more to do. You cannot reverse decades of underinvestment in even 6 years, especially when what you're dealing with at the same time is a COVID pandemic, is floods, is cyclones. It's not been a clear run, and the Labour hasn't been able to do all the things it wanted to do, but we 100% recognise the importance of our primary healthcare workforce in particular, but everybody within the system, and that actually includes research. You know, we have to look at the past, we have to look to the future.
Great. So there's a few people have been putting their hands up. So we've got one here, and then Councillor Sam McDonald's after that, please, and then keep putting your hands up.
Climate change is the biggest challenge that we have, and it's cheaper to fix it now than to deal with the Cyclone Gabriels going forward. I would like to know, and we need to meet the 1.5, which the time is actually really running out to do. I would like to know from the panel what practical things will your party do in the next 3 years to address this?
Well, since I've got the microphone, I might as well start. Yes, practical, I think, is the right word. We need to be very practical and pragmatic with our approach to the environment. And I think one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we can consent renewable energy far quicker than we ever have before. We want to make sure we boost the number of EV chargers around the country to really make sure we can electrify our fleet and make sure people can increase the uptake of EVs to get rid of range anxiety. And yes, the climate is something very, very important to me. And as I've mentioned, I'm heavily involved in the organics, and also any business that we have is being environmentally focused. I think it's a very important part. I think all New Zealanders are a bit like pistachios. They're a little bit green on the inside.
Well, actually, Democracy NZ does not buy into the current climate change narrative at all. So I think I better pass this along.
Yeah, I don't agree with that position. I think that the questioner is entirely right. We are in a state of climate emergency, and we do need to act. And it is critical that we do so. It's critical that we do not reverse the gains that we've made. We started committing back to the emissions trading scheme. That money has been identified as part of the funding that the National Party wishes to use to pay for tax cuts for the wealthiest individuals in New Zealand. We've committed to the Zero Carbon Act, as you've seen. We've committed to no more offshore drilling. We've committed to green hydrogen. And with regard to the process for resource consenting for renewables, it was Labour that introduced the fast-track process there. The EV clean car discount has been extraordinarily successful in introducing more electric vehicles into New Zealand, I think from 1% to 5%. And that's something that we intend to continue if we remain in government after the election. Look, Labour takes climate extremely seriously. We have appreciated the extraordinarily good work of Minister James Shaw. I can only say that we commit to continuing the good work into the future.
Thank you, Sarah. And I guess when we look at some of the gains that we have been having over the last 6 years, it's because the Green Party there's been a small number of Green MPs in Parliament actually making a difference. And so a lot of the wins you're talking about, that's the Green Party. That's the Green Party pushing it. But we are slowly getting there, but it's definitely not happening fast enough. And yes, we need to electrify our fleet, but once again, just electrifying our fleet is not the solution. We actually have to give people proper, sustainable transport choices. And while we've invested for decades in road and infrastructure to allow cars to get from A to B, we failed with public transport, and we failed for people walking, we failed for people biking. And in Christchurch, where we've actually invested in a cycleway network, we're starting to see the gains from that with more and more people cycling. And that's what we need to do, and we need to do it faster, and we need to do it across the country. And that needs a government that has Green MPs pushing for those outcomes. Now, the Greens Climate Safe Communities plan will ensure that Christchurch gets light rail. Will ensure good public transport with a working, efficient, fast and reliable bus network. A completed cycleway network. Good walking environment. More trees for shade to shelter under. Higher density, all the things that are required if you want to have a sustainable city. But it's ensuring you have a government that creates a framework for councils to work under and co-invest with councils to make it happen. And over the last while I was on council, that's what we were able to do. We worked with government to get co-investment to allow us to roll out those things. And that's what we need to keep doing. But we're only going to do that. We have a government that is committed to climate action.
Thanks, Mike. Look, a range of issues that I think we can implement quite quickly. One of them is electrifying our urban bus fleet, which we can do. Labour does have a policy for that to do it by 2035. We've spoken to bus manufacturers, we can do it by 2030. And that just doesn't reduce emissions, but it's great for air pollution. And a lot of deaths are caused by air pollution every day. We know in Christchurch, air pollution has always been an issue for us. We want to support our farmers to do nature-positive farming by introducing biodiversity credits for changes in land management, which is really important because they're looking for support to make the changes from intensive dairy, for example. We think the ETS needs a review. The last 3 auctions have failed. It's not working anymore. We'd probably prefer a much simpler carbon tax and dividend going back to everyone. That's probably the easiest solution, and then people can actually see the impact of where those costs are going for extra charges on petrol, for example. Mike mentioned a point which I think is really important, and this is something for us as kind of, citizens here, and that is tree canopy. We have to plant a lot of trees because it really helps with heat management as well as air pollution. That's absolutely critical. If councils need support for that, please make bids into the government. You may find some money coming your way. That's critical. One of the biggest challenges we're going to have, which will impact Christchurch a lot, is managed retreat. Council has been working on that for a long time. Government is going to have to be very supportive around what councils want to do around those issues. But if we don't take action, the insurers will, and things will start to get very expensive. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a question. Yeah, Councillor Sam McDonald had a question. Don't let him hold the mic.
Been there, done that. Hey, look, no, in all seriousness, thank you all for coming along tonight. It takes real courage to get up there and do this, so I do want to admire and respect you all for doing that. But I never miss an opportunity to talk about Three Waters or chlorination. And I know having Leanne and Phil here as former mayors, just thinking through the work we've done as a city to invest in the infrastructure to actually get to that point, we've been told continuously that actually we can now not get that exemption from chlorination. It just seems like we're getting over-regulated to a point where it's unreasonable when actually we have a very, very safe water infrastructure network. And I want to understand from you as our local MP what you would be prepared to do on our behalf to ensure that actually we can get that exemption for chlorination, noting that no one has got sick from our water.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been treated poorly by Wellington all the way along, and having been on council when we agreed to do the temporary chlorination and having spent fortunes on it. Now, a lot of that is good investment because all our pump stations now are above ground, so that means they're much easier to maintain. Our water is completely safe to drink. I mean, even after the earthquakes, we had no waterborne illnesses. It's quite incredible. And we used to have a little station, drinking station at Burnside Park, which people have been drinking, and it's been shut down for no reason at all. So I will do whatever it takes to give the power back to council to show that it's delivering safe water. And if council is happy and our local medical officer of health is happy, that power should return to council. So let's get the chlorine out of the water. It's not needed anymore. And we've got the systems if it is needed. And we've got the testing if it is needed. And the same with Three Waters, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Thanks, Sam. And I think we all agreed that we do need regulations around our water supply, because what people need is clean, safe drinking water. And that's what Christchurch has had a history of delivering. And we know that, and we know what happened to the earthquakes, but it was chlorinated because the council has the ability to do that in events where actually the water's not great, they can actually chlorinate it. And I know as a councillor myself how frustrating it was to actually invest millions and millions of dollars on the water infrastructure and the network for then the goalposts to be moved as you're getting closer to the exemption. So I think you need the regulations, you need an exemption in there, and you need a clear pathway to be able to actually get to it. And I know this is what the benefit is of having local representation in central government that actually knows what's happening down here. And it's something that I'll always advocate for, is actually a clear pathway to get exemptions and for those goalposts not to be moved. I regularly use the wee pump station at Burnside Park to get unchlorinated water. Was really, really disappointed when that was closed down. I personally think that council should have pushed back again, and even had they just put a note on it saying it's not suitable for drinking water, because there's a lot of things that people use clean water for that's not just drinking.
I guess that's my point.
Yeah.
Wellington has got so over-regulated, we have no say.
Well, sometimes you've got to push back. You pushed back in the past around housing density, but you didn't push back about this one.
No, but I'm not going to get into that.
We've done enough of that, Sam.
Stand.
It's like the old days.
Look, I concur both with Rev and Mike. We'll do absolutely everything possible to get that rectified. Over-regulation, overreach, it's just another example of this government taking control without listening to yourselves and the council. So that has absolutely got to change.
Yeah, there's quite a lot in there. Of course, it looks just a little bit of chlorination on the surface, but actually there's a whole ideology kind of behind that. And I think while it's great to have a water regulator, of course, it was formed in 2020, which originally it was the Ministry of Health function. But I would say, what's the evidence that Christchurch water needs chlorination? It is ridiculous. We have a pump down here which is shut. You go a K that way to the other side of Rusty Road, you can whack down a bore and you happy days. You can drink the water. So the thing is, it seems ridiculous that there's a line in the sand that says that we need chlorination. So it'd be really about what evidence that Christchurch needs chlorination. As all the other candidates have mentioned, we have gone through traumatic events which would have disrupted our water tables, and we had no illnesses. It kind of comes back to the Three Waters. Like, we would repeal the Three Waters and give the assets and control back to local councils. They know best, and it's about taking things out of Wellington.
I'm excited with this question, thank you. Okay, there is, as you say, there is quite a lot to unpack in here, but I'm going to start with chlorination, and please forgive me if I go on a wee bit. You feel free to stop me talking, but I think there's an awful lot that I need to share that doesn't seem to be fully understood, and that's completely understandable. So as I'm part of the Health Select Committee, was until Parliament ended this week, but I was on the Health Select Committee, and so I was party to the initial conversations around taumata arawai, and heard lots of submissions around chlorination of water in particular. Now, one of the things that I fought really hard for on the Health Select Committee was to ensure that councils were able to prove to Taumata Arawai, it was the entity that's created to actually oversee, it's nothing to do with Wellington or central government. So Taumata Arawai and the city councils can work together to prove that their water can meet safe drinking standards without chlorination. So I worked really hard to ensure that the legislation that we put forward and that passed did actually have that as a provision, that it is entirely possible and reasonable for councils to be able to prove to Taumata Arawai that they can provide safe, clean drinking water for their community. Because I think we need to never forget why the conversation around water started in the first place, and that was because of Havelock North. People died. A disaster like Havelock North in a city the size of Christchurch would be horrifying beyond belief. We have doctors here. We have people like, me of a reasonable understanding of health and of public health, and that is not something that we want to do. The other thing that people don't quite realise is that the smaller councils are completely unable to afford the repairs that they needed to their systems. Okay, as your ILM, right, and I was getting there, and I did say I was going to talk a little bit because there's things that aren't really fully understood. So as the ILM MP, I stood up for the community of Christchurch and ensured that we could continue to have unchlorinated water if it was proven to be safe to do so. Now I'm going to have a little bit of, I'm going to have a little bit of a fact check here, right? So looking here at the compliance with drinking water standards in 2019 to 2020, 6 of the 9 Christchurch City Council suppliers failed to comply with the Health Act of drinking water standards, and at the time one of these suppliers had a temporary boil water notice in place during this period. Now understand this is 2020, this is the most up-to-date figures that I have, okay? What is known about the network condition? In Christchurch, 22% of drinking water pipelines are in poor condition. I understand that it's slightly less now because repairs have taken place. 11% of the wastewater network is in poor condition, and 6% of the stormwater network is in poor condition. So all is not rosy in the city of Christchurch. However, the council were the ones that closed that water supply down, the Burnside Park. It was not central government. It was not central government. It was not Wellington.
Look, Sarah,
it was the regulator.
I think we need to move on. I'm sorry.
It's frustrating though, because I'm being asked questions and accusations are being thrown, and it simply is untrue. I'm really,
I understand,
really
but
happy.
we have a lot of questions in the audience.
Okay, I'll leave it
there. We do need to move on. I'm conscious of time. We need to finish soon. I'm sorry. Sorry. Please put your hands up. I am conscious of time. Let's try to make things direct and to the point, and let's try and get through a few questions.
My question is for Sarah, and unfortunately it is still chlorine. I asked you a question recently at a Meet the Candidate.
Yeah.
Your recommendation to me and my husband, who is suffering kidney failure, get a reverse osmosis machine. Can I send that bill to you because his skin is having issues now?
That's a bit of a misrepresentation of a fairly long conversation, and I didn't say everything's fine, get a reverse osmosis filter at all. I said that as the water was being chlorinated, that one of the options that was available to you that was a very expensive and not a desirable option at all. I have a different memory of that conversation, which was quite long, and I expressed concern, as you have expressed concern, about the chlorination of the water supply in Christchurch, and I explained to you that I'd worked really hard to ensure that the council could continue to provide unchlorinated water, and that the issue sat between Taumata Arawai and the council and not with government, and I was really clear about that. Now, I have no intention of being unsympathetic towards any concerns that you have whatsoever.
Right, let's just all calm down, please. Calm down. Okay. Yes.
Hey, I'm happy to wiki o te reo Māori, everybody. My name's Stephen Kennedy. My question is only for 3 of you. I can Google your policies and they're all beautiful and they're good to hear and they're promises, but only 3 of you can answer, so fight for the mic. What does the word hope mean to you? Thanks.
Which 3?
Fight for it.
That's right, brilliant. Look, hope for me is that our young children can grow up in a safe, warm, loving environment and can reach their dreams and aspirations. And I think that's what we want for all New Zealanders.
Hope for me at this present point in time is to bring back democracy to New Zealanders. That is actually my hope, because our rights have been raped and pillaged under so-called emergency situations, and I think every New Zealander needs to have their Bill of Rights absolutely protected.
I guess right now is my hope is that come October 14th we have a progressive government with lots of Green MPs, so we can actually see bold action in climate change, for the inequality we currently see, and actually for nature. Like if we get more Greens MPs into Parliament, then we can have some hope.
Yeah, hope for me is quite simple. It's about building a better future and investing in our future generations.
My question is for Raf. Do you still stand by your policy to cull the cats?
Look, I love cats, so I don't know where you. We are a cat-positive party.
Hi there. I've got a few points to make. Firstly, all the candidates for Ireland, because I think there might be a new Conservative candidate, Chris O'Brien. So have you invited everybody? Secondly, climate scamdemics is exactly that. It's a scam. They're now saying climate boiling. Third point.
Questions?
Yes or no? Will you bring back the mandated staff? That will go greatly towards solving the health crisis. There's perfectly healthy staff sitting at home unjabbed. And fourthly, is everyone in this room aware that Ashley Bloomfield is hosting Advancing 2030 Agenda on the 28th of September? And would you, if you're elected, will you cut your ties with the UN Agenda 2030 completely? Because that will solve the housing intensification problem and all the cycleways littering this city. And yeah.
If I can just butt in there, the new Conservative Party have only just put their nomination forward. We were unaware of it, and we probably wouldn't have invited them anyway.
Right. A few people have been raising their hands up for questions.
Sorry, I've got a more specific question, just for the National and Green candidates. Is there anywhere saying that you won't work together after the election? Now, that's for Hamish and Mike. Just, yeah.
Look, it's our membership that make the decision. We're probably the most democratic party there is. And I can't imagine that our membership would actually want us to work with the National Party when you actually look at the policies and plans that they have and where it will take New Zealand.
If the Greens Party was a true Greens Party and not a Red Party, we might consider it.
Hey, just one quick question. I see there's a lot talking about like the future and promises as a nation, and also ILAM, the University of Canterbury, sort of is one of the biggest campus, one of the top universities globally that sits there. What sort of policies that you will bring out to support the university and the tertiary sectors within ILAM?
Okay.
Yes, I'm going to start. I hope no one minds. As a former academic, I'm very interested in the space. We haven't brought out our policy yet, but what I will say is there's some interesting things about research and development in New Zealand. New Zealanders spend more money on ice cream than the Health Research Council spends on medical research. And actually, the last time the Health Research Council budget was increased was 2017, just for Sarah's benefit. But the thing is, I think it's really important. If we're going to lift the standard of living and quality of life, we really need to back our education and research at the university. There's research-only courses is a small portion of the university's budget. There's also the SAC, the student achievement. I can't think what the C stands for. But that really hasn't been keeping rate with inflation as well, and that's why a lot of the universities around New Zealand are actually really struggling with their budgets. If you look at Canterbury, it's doing really well. It's attracting students from all around the country to come here to Christchurch, and I think part of it is actually some of the great staff at the university and some of the great research programs that they're doing, whether it be the digital arts and some of those more innovative projects. But you look at the spin-offs that are coming out of the university. There's Zinc Covery, which is a startup which is recovering zinc plating off metals. There's a company started Precision Chroma, which is using 3D technology to filter out biologicals for pharmaceutical interventions. These are some of the amazing things, and we really need to kind of get behind them to have the ecosystem where we can really leverage them for not just for the University of Canterbury and Ireland, but right across the country. And actually, Ireland as electorate has done the most for global emissions than any electorate in Christchurch, in New Zealand. Of course, back in the 1970s, there was a chap at the university called David Byer that invented a way how to control the speed of electric motors very efficiently. And that's technology now we see in Teslas and in hybrid cars. That is what research and development can do, not just for New Zealand, but also for around the world. Of course, we have Fabrum, which has been a spin-off from some of the ex-students from the University of Canterbury, which now have hydrogen generators that they ship around the world. And they're working with the major airplane manufacturers for clean technology. That is why we need research and development, and that's why we need to be pushing the University of Canterbury.
Thank you. And look, I just want to, I guess, focus on what I see as the most important part of the university, and that's the students. And, you know, I've been doing a lot of door knocking, a lot of talking to students, and they're struggling. And they're struggling with the cost of living, and they're struggling every day. And the Greens have a plan that will actually lift people out of poverty. They'll end up having a minimum income, guaranteed income of $385 a week. They'll have free dental care. You know, they'll have flats that'll be warm and dry and healthy. Now, that is what's going to help the students. And when we actually make the students healthy and actually make the students be able to actually get by day to day without struggling, then they can focus on their education.
Kia ora. You're absolutely right. We have the most amazing university in Ireland. The University of Canterbury is something that we should all be extraordinarily proud of. And it is, in fact, a university that has, as Hamish rightly pointed out, seen an increase in student numbers, seen an increase in international students, and we should be really proud of that. And I think that one of the reasons for that is that we also have an extraordinarily strong Vice Chancellor in Professor Cheryl Delaray. As far as what I stand for and what I want to see for the university, look. Labour is a huge, introduce fees free for students, for the first year fees free. That is something that will continue, something that I'm very proud of. I said before that having taught midwifery students at Ara, not at the University of Canterbury admittedly, midwifery students have been really at the pointy end of quite a lot of, they really struggle to get through their degree programs. That has been eased a little by changing their degree program structure, but that's slightly irrelevant. What has been important is increasing increasing student allowance by $100 a week, introducing the fees-free program, looking at improving the quality of the rental accommodation, looking to make sure that nobody can be evicted without cause, so removing no-cause evictions, making sure that rents can't be raised more than once a year. You know, those are real practical things that Labour has done in government to actually support all of our students, not just those in the University of Canterbury. I can't tell you how incredibly proud I was to be at the Prime Minister's Science Prize and see some of our University of Canterbury team receiving, you know, the preeminent prize for science and innovation in New Zealand as the Prime Minister's Science Prize. Incidentally, and by the way, we also had two of our local Ireland schools receive the Prime Minister's Science Prize. A teacher from Burnside Primary School, the first ever primary school teacher to receive the Teachers Award, and a student from Burnside High. So it's not just about university students, it's about bringing students into the university.
Great. Thank you. I'm just conscious of the time, and there are a lot more questions.
There's a lot to be
I'm
proud of,
sorry.
basically.
I will keep moving on. Keep moving on. Or we have some, there's a couple of questions. One man's had his hand up for a long time. I just would like to ask the candidates to please, could you keep your answers pretty short? Because we want to hear everyone, and just keep them short and simple and to the point for us. Thank you.
My question is to everyone. Short answers, please. What's your position on lowering the voting age to 16?
Do not agree with lowering the voting age to 16. Whilst there are a lot of very intelligent, well-spoken young people out there, I would say the majority of the people will not be well-informed to make an informed choice.
Thank you. Look, just like the City Council in their recent submission, I support lowering the voting age to 16.
Yeah, I support it too. I think the earlier you start, the better you get. And you have to remember, a lot of young people, they won't vote at 16. Their first voting election could be when they're 18, 19. And if we switch to a 4-year term, could be 20. The sooner we get our young people engaged in civics and how their country is run, the better.
You know, I don't support it. I think if we are going to make a change, it has to be done by a referendum, and I think then it's the population of New Zealand that's going to decide.
Research is pretty clear, actually, as Raf said, that if people actually vote at the first opportunity that they're able to vote, it sets up a lifetime habit of engaging in the democratic process, which is so precious to all of us. It's really important. I have to say, I know many 16-year-olds that are far more clued up and sensible than many 56-year-olds, she said, pointing to herself. And so I'm personally in support of it. I think that there is, it's really, the future is basically for our young people, yeah? And if you don't have a voice, if you don't have a place at the table, you don't have the capacity to influence your future. The future isn't really for those of us who are in our 50s and above, although hopefully we've got a long time of it.
And my question is for the Green candidate. I'm aware of the fact that he mentioned, in his opening speech, he mentioned New Brighton. Now, I'm aware from my own research that the average temperature in the world has increased by 1.1 degree since 1880. Could the Green candidate tell us how much the sea level has risen at New Brighton?
Well...
Sorry, I don't have the data on me at the moment about the sea level rise, but the modelling is actually very clear and the science is very, very clear. We're a low-lying coastal city, and actually we need to make sure that we've got adaptation plans in place to allow those communities to have a way forward.
Hi, this question is for Hamish, Juanita, and Raf, and it's about our school system. We know that the results now are so low, it's embarrassing. But also it's not just the wage of the teachers, but what is being taught. And a lot of it has to do with the gender and sexuality education that is putting a barrier between parents who have strong moral religious beliefs, because I'm connected to a lot of people from a lot of cultures and religions that don't agree. They want to teach their children themselves about sexuality when they feel their children are ready for it. But it's being forced on them, and it's creating a rift between the parent and the child, and we need science in school, whereas this new education coming out is taking science out of school. So what will the three of you do? Because we know what's already happening.
Well, you're preaching to a scientist. So yes, I think, and we've been very clear. And let's put where our actually education standards are. 98% of Decile 1 students failed the pilot for NCEA last year. So we are falling behind. We need to make sure we teach our children the basics brilliantly. So we want to have an hour's maths, reading and literacy each day. Not only that, we want to have a clear outline in the curriculum of when students are going to get taught these things. Because one thing that we haven't really been talking about is also attendance. So 64% of students in Christchurch attended school regularly in term 1. And what's really missing from that conversation is the link between their lack of achievement and attendance. When students are getting to high school and can't read and write properly, they're not going to achieve, and then they're not going to go to school. And when we're having that many students kind of drop out of school, what future do they have? And so the thing is, it comes back to actually teaching the basics properly, teaching science, and we need to get back to the really core subjects of maths, the physics, the chemistry. How can our students compete on the international stage? We have a lot of new technologies coming through. We need to teach the basics so we can thrive and go forward.
We want to refocus education, getting the basics right in the schools, back to the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. Alongside this, the technical and life skills need to be offered that children need in modern workplaces. So that's just going back to the basics. But I think what Diane was actually really asking was what would we do about the sex education that is currently being taught in schools. We say, let children be children. The sex education, that should be with the parents, obviously, as they get a little bit older, but what they're teaching in schools and the literature that is available is totally unacceptable.
Great. Move on, please.
Yeah, I mean, on the education front, I mean, probably would agree very much with what Hamish is talking about. You know, we need to go back to a curriculum that is teaching the basics well. Reading, writing, geography, history, science is kind of what a lot of us grew up with. The curriculum does seem to have gone a little bit off kilter. We support structured literacy in terms of teaching basic literacy to children. That's critical. I think National came out and supported that, which we think is good. Sex education, look, I think ultimately, yep, this is a parental issue. Parents have to feel comfortable about what their kids are learning at school. At the same time, you know, we're living in the world of the internet. You can't keep stuff from kids. And it's better that they have good structured support around these issues. And school obviously is a place for that. If parents feel uncomfortable, then obviously that's their right to take up that issue with the school.
I've got a question I have a question for Hamish and Raf. You brought up the subject, Hamish, crime. You've taken over office. This goes for you too, Raf. You're 1 month into your job, a mini crime wave in Ireland. You've got no more policemen, no more police cars than what you've got today, and no more budget. What are you going to do about it? You have 50 disgruntled members of your community on your doorstep.
I can tell you Raf's answer if you want. He's going to have 150 more community police officers. Unfortunately, Stuart Nash will tell you how good it is for a minister to interfere with police operations. So yeah, no, it is a really important issue, and the thing is, it's not necessarily about police. We do need to have good police resources, but we actually have to have repercussions for some of these things, because we don't want to have offenders being caught and re-released and then just kind of repeating the whole thing. So yeah, so the thing is, it's about kind of making sure we have. And so
that's in the future. What are you going to do about it now?
Well, so we've said clearly that we're going to set up military academies for youth offenders. We're going to have a serious youth offender. Once again, there is separation from government to police operations. Look, I would be advocating very hard for Ireland. As I mentioned earlier, my family has been exposed to some of this lawlessness, and so the thing is, it's about kind of making sure there's repercussions for the actions.
Yeah, well, in terms of the police, yes, as Hamish said, our policy is 450 new community constables. We need police visible on our streets to feel safe. But also, there are some issues within the police force. The police force is very siloed, and there are often officers around who could respond to events, but actually they're not allowed to. So I think actually speaking to the police commissioner locally, be saying what can you do about getting other sworn officers to respond to events if the manpower is sitting there. And that's obviously an operational issue. All we can do as MPs is have the conversation and suggest that actually maybe they deploy their resources differently.
Great. Have we got time for one more question? We might not. Have we got time for one more? One more? Okay.
Just in really short, really specific terms, what will each of the representatives do about providing clean, dry, warm flats for students?
Yeah, well, we have healthy homes legislation. I've been into quite a few student flats. I usually put a hazmat suit on. It's pretty grim. I mean, I had the same conversation in 2017 when I was having dinners in student flats, and it hasn't changed much. I suggested then to a bunch of students, set up your own property company, buy homes, make them healthy, rent them out to other students. Yeah, I mean, there's a regulatory issue here, and also we need to build more houses. So I'm very supportive of the university building more student accommodation. I think they've got land to do it. We need to make it easy for them to do that. I'd love to see the car park, the big car park at UC, repurposed for student flats. I think that would really help. Ultimately, supply. The more supply you put into the market, the more that landlords will have to address those issues as well.
Thanks for the question. And actually, Ireland has 50% people renting at the moment, so there's a big renting population in Ireland. And the Greens actually have a really good plan around that, and it's called the Renters Pledge. And that will actually not only see rent limits rises capped to ensure it stays affordable, also have a warrant of fitness to ensure that you have a warm, dry, healthy home, because actually that's really important for having a great education.
I think the healthy homes is very, very good. However, if there were opportunities for people to invest in property, so I think some of the some of the regulations that have actually stopped now to encourage people to invest in property, but also I do think there's a lot of over-regulation as well. So it's about helping and assisting people to actually build those properties in the first place.
So we have a housing crisis generally in New Zealand. We've got 27,000 people on emergency housing waiting lists. We have 3,000 people living in motels. Clearly, the housing system is broken, and that affects students renting places. We've seen rents increase by about $150 a week here in Christchurch. So we've got a multiple step plan to actually address that. We want to rezone a lot of land to kind of encourage more growth and keep the house prices stable. We also want to reintroduce, reinvigorate the rental market. We've seen a decrease in rentals by about 19% in the city, while we've seen an increase of demand of up to 36%. and that's when we're seeing people applying for multiple homes. Once again, I had a niece who applied for 26 places before she could find a place to rent so she could study nursing. So these are the sort of things that we need to address, and we think by getting landlords back into the market by allowing interest deductibility is going to help get the supply up. We also need to have schemes where we have build to rent. So these are professional places which often usually are multi-units. So we need to encourage that, and we also need to get our community housing providers energised and give them the resources because they know the needs of the community better than anybody else.
Thank you. What we need not to do is to reintroduce foreign buyers into our market, which is going to increase pressure all the way down the scale. Look, this government has actually built more social housing than any other government since the 1950s. 1 in 7 of our current social houses have actually been built by this government. So building more houses, really important. We've committed to doing more of that. We've undertaken 110,000 insulation retrofits. We've committed to doing more. Making houses warmer, safer and drier is really important. But it's also really important that when students in particular, because that's what you were talking about, point out that their accommodation isn't fit for purpose, doesn't meet the standards that already exist for warmer homes, that they can't just be evicted. So that's where what I was talking about earlier, the having removed that no-cause eviction. So if you're a good tenant that's paying your way and looking after the property, that you can't just be kicked out because you pointed out to your landlord that the house that you're living in doesn't actually meet the standard for warmer homes. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm conscious of the time and we do need to finish up soon, but I would like to say thank you to all the candidates for their time and discussion, and we do appreciate your willingness to share your thoughts and ideas with us, and it's exciting to think that somebody here will be our advocate for Ilam, our community that we love. So before we finish, I would like to invite each of the candidates to share some concluding remarks. Let's only have 2 minutes. And Sarah, you've got the mic, so would you please start and we'll just go down, please. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. It's been a really well-mannered and beautifully run event, so thank you. Look, I want to talk a little bit about the job that each of the candidates here on this platform, actually with the potential exception of Mike, is putting themselves up for the Member of Parliament for Ilam. It's a job that's about people. It's a role of service, serving the people of Ireland, serving each and every person, regardless of who they voted for, regardless of what that person can do for the Member of Parliament. That's what I've done each and every day. Each and every day that I've had the extraordinary privilege of being in this role, I've served the people of Ireland. I've never made promises I can't keep. I've delivered with honesty and integrity every single day, and each and every day I've had the back of each and every person in this room. There are 2 types of politician in my view. There are those who seek to serve their community, and there are those who seek, as in doing that, to lift people up to the best of their ability. And there are those who seek to serve themselves, to advance themselves, and to serve their own political ambition. I've always been a politician of the first type. My goal has always been to serve this community to the best of my ability. I seek only to serve you, and I guess it's up to you to decide what sort of politician you want to serve you.
Thank you.
Ilam is a great place to grow up and a great place to grow old, but I think it could be better. And so I have a vision for Ilam and for New Zealand. I think we, as I mentioned, we can be the best small advanced economy in the world, where we have higher standards of living, higher incomes, lower cost of living, better infrastructure, better healthcare and better education. We need our children to be able to grow up in safe streets. We need them to be able to reach their dreams and aspirations and compete on a world stage. To do that, we actually need to get an economy that is working. We need to make sure that we are teaching the brilliant the basics brilliantly, and we need to deliver healthcare. So why vote for me? Well, I would be an MP in a national-led government, and I would be able to achieve things for the people of Ireland. So thank you very much. I'm Hamish Campbell, the National Party candidate for Ireland.
Caught a little bit on the spot here. I hadn't prepared anything. Look, with Democracy NZ, we are about decentralisation, not centralisation. And what we would like to see is councils being councils. The long arm of central government, I think, will become a stranglehold, and there will be no local decision making. I think communities should be about the people in them and everybody making a contribution, and that's what we actually support and think that we should go back to. There are many, many very, very concerned people seeing that the government will just not listen to us and just keep on making decision after decision without any consultation. They look like they're consulting us, but they're actually not. So that is actually what I think would work for Ilam, all the other communities. I'm a very solution-driven person, love helping people. That's what I've done all of my career, and I would love to be able to serve you in Ilam.
Thank you. I'll just keep this really short and sweet. Only a party vote Green will actually give you the opportunity to have 2 MPs. And if I'm elected off the list, you'll have a champion for climate, for equality and nature. And that's what a party vote Green can do.
Thanks, Mike. Well, I'm actually here just for your electorate vote. You can party vote for any of these fine parties on show today. Look, this is my 4th election here in Ireland in 10 years. I've been on this journey with this community, with this city, and I thought I'd actually retired from politics, as Leanne will know, but there's more to do. Christchurch has a story to tell the rest of this country, a story that we should be telling people in Auckland, in the Hawke's Bay, about recovering from disaster, the sort of investments that we need to make. I'm excited about the future of Christchurch. The job isn't done yet. And what we're missing most of is a powerful voice in Wellington, advocating for Christchurch, day in, day out. That's something that I can do for you. Let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah, Hamish, Juanita, Mike and Raf. I'd like you all to give another round of applause for these fine candidates. We are coming to the end of the Meet Your Ilam Candidate public meeting. Thank you all for being such a great audience. It's wonderful to see so many people here from our community that care about Ilam. Again, I just have to do this. The Avonhead Community Group, we are made up of volunteers. You can become a financial member of the Avonhead Community Group with voting rights for a $2 membership fee. We do rely on donations to cover our costs, and pamphlets and letterboxes, it costs a lot of money. So if you would like to make any small donation or big donation, there is a wee bucket outside the doors. Also, there is a slip of paper with our bank account details on, so feel free to take that away. We would love to have your email and your name and address so that we have you on our books. We know who you are. You can be a part of us, and together we become a greater force for the area. We do provide regular updates on our Facebook page. We've got a Facebook page and we have a website. Please have a look. It is called the Avonhead Community Group on Facebook. Just on another side note, there was a number of people that could not be here tonight. This public meeting has been recorded and we can share it. So if you know somebody who couldn't be here from the area who would love to go back and watch it, it will be uploaded to our website and to the St Christopher's website, I believe, as well, so you can have a look at that. And please do share it and get the word out there. That would be absolutely fantastic. Right, before I finish, I would also like to say thank you to Reverend Michael Brantley for hosting us and the staff from St Christopher's, the wonderful people on sound, all the people from the Avonhead Community Group, the pamphlet droppers. There's so many volunteers. It does take a lot of work. The next thing we have to do is get out there and vote. Thank you. I believe Reverend Michael Brantley would like to say one word.
If you would like to share it, St Christopher's Anglican Church, Christchurch is the channel on YouTube, and you'll be able to see it there. It's, as a non-profit, we're able to keep things posted permanently, so it'll be